Hello and welcome back to the channel, folks. HeirofCarthage here, and we get to see Rome again on the battlefield. I like that. I like seeing Rome, and I like seeing some of these different builds for Rome to potentially see how they could be used in different situations. They're actually up against Syracuse, so a Greek faction up against the Romans. Historically, I believe there was a bit of a showdown. I don't know about directly between Rome and Syracuse, but certainly between Rome and a lot of Greek colonies and Epirus and others. So it should be kind of a fun semi-historical basis here as well. There are some thorax hoplites up front. If I remember right, these are not very impressive units other than the weapon damage they get is as good as it gets for a spear with that 8 armor piercing. If I'm looking at the rest of it, 90 armor is okay. It really just depends on the price of those units and whether they're any good, and I just don't recall the price at the moment. There's 4 thorax swords, 2 on each flank. In the middle, we've got some mercenary Balearic slingers. They're backed up by a couple of mercenary veteran hoplites. Now, these hoplites have a substantial armor at 105. They also have the 30 weapon damage spear with 8 AP. Good to note. A couple of more thorax swords that make 6 in total. And then we have Hippeus lancers in the back, along with some mercenary Campanian cavalry. So a very brutal-looking army. I about half wonder if this is a higher funds battle based on what I'm seeing on the battlefield here for Syracuse, because that is a pretty substantial cavalry component back here. Mercenary Campanian cavalry are just brutal in a melee with light units, and honestly even pretty good into the back of some heavy infantry units. They have huge melee attack at 69 and pretty solid damage here. Not a lot of AP, but it's good damage. Charge bonus is a little lower for a cavalry unit because they're melee, but they are a tough unit, and they will mop up skirmishers and other light infantry, and like I said, very brutal into the back of heavy infantry. Rome has a line of triarii up front, which again makes me think that perhaps this is a different funding battle. I don't know. There's some auxiliary Balearic slingers here, 2 of them, and they are backing up some Praetorian guards, so the Roman bringing politics to the battlefield here with these emperor. They're taking time out of their busy day backstabbing emperors and their masters to come to the battlefield and fight for Rome. So there are 3 Praetorian guard behind those triarii, so that is some very elite infantry. Otherwise, we have some gladiatresses. These are some capable sword units that like to get into a battle without being charged first. And then there's auxiliary cav backing them up, which is some of the better melee cavalry that Rome has to offer on a standard basis. There's a Praetorian cavalry, which is probably the best melee cavalry that Rome has to offer. It's just very expensive. It's interesting that you can't put your general into a Praetorian cavalry unit. That seems a little bit off, that you couldn't get a Praetorian bodyguard, potentially. So the thorax hoplites are going to come up into a hoplite wall formation to get things started. It looks like the triarii are moving to engage them. I would imagine the thorax hoplites should win this fight. They're in a wall. They get increased stats. They have a better armor-piercing spear. The Roman infantry has slightly better armor and slightly better health, and they'll get a charge, technically. I would imagine the thorax sword, or sorry, these are Samnite warriors. Not all of them were thorax swords. Looks like they were on that flank. These 2 are Samnites, and then behind them is another Samnite. So it's 3 Samnites, 3 thorax. These Samnite warriors ought to do just fine against those triarii as well. Here comes the Praetorian Guard. Now, I would imagine the Praetorian Guard at 65 attack and 39 damage. Now, this is a higher damage for the Romans. It is only still 5 AP. But those Praetorian Guard are going to be a unit to be reckoned with. 65 attack is significantly powerful. They also have 90 armor, 65 health, base morale at 75. Very tough units. They should have no problem shredding thorax hoplites. These gladiatresses are going to go toe-to-toe with some thorax swords. I'm going to go ahead and put this into standard speed. The Campanian cavalry is being chased by the Praetorians auxiliary and a spear gladiatress, and they are right to withdraw from that until they get support. That is not where Campanian cavalry wants to be in a fight, and that is a good play by the Roman to be able to take out a lot of high funds units, potentially, if they're able to get the engagement they need there. And it looks like they will. They could even use their spear gladiatresses to hold the swords out of that fight, and they should be all right. It looks like the swords are still going to come in, but the Romans just going to commit as well. Here comes a frenzy and the killing spree for the spear gladiatresses. They're looking to knock out that Campanian cavalry quickly. Look at that. Gladiatresses, though, just got flattened by a Hippeus lancer who came in from the side. Gladiatresses do not have the armor to withstand that, and they got completely KO'd by the Hippeus lancer, so a nice reaction. Then over here, some Tarentine cavalry is tearing into the Balearic slingers. Not a good situation for Rome. The gladiatresses are actually doing quite well against the Samnite warriors here. The triarii, not so much, and this Praetorian Guard, of course, won't have any problem with that mercenary veteran hoplite. But it looks like Rome doing pretty admirable overall, I think, in the frontline fight. This cavalry fight started off looking quite good for them and is not going to finish that way. That Campanian cavalry, despite not being anti-cavalry, is still tough. They come with a lot of armor, and they have a lot of attack, and Rome is paying a pretty dear price over here right now. The Praetorian cavalry, in fact, is going to have to withdraw. They've got the loyalty and presence thing going on right now. It looks like they're going to try and come support that Campanian cavalry now breaking free. The Roman bodyguard now in some pretty serious trouble as well. Looks like the Roman did get into the skirmishers for Syracuse, though, so they repaid each other like for like there, eye for an eye. These Samnite warriors are collapsing to the gladiatress attack, so it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if Syracuse breaks too soon in the middle, or if they can hold long enough to give their cavalry some advantage here. That Campanian cavalry is going to be substantially dangerous late into this game, and Rome is in some pretty big doo-doo to that regard, unless they can free up some Triarii to help protect against it. They do still have an auxiliary cav here. That will be pretty important in trying to fend off that Campanian cavalry. Here, a Tarentine charge into the Praetorians, which is honestly kind of a joke. Those Tarentine cavalry can only hope to be a nuisance for a short period of time. They won't do any real damage to that Praetorian guard in a melee. They certainly could with their javelins. So that fight did wrap up. The Romans did get a slinger back, and they still have an auxiliary cav over here as well. So the Romans do have some answer to that Campanian cavalry, which at this point then would lead me to believe that Rome is probably at an advantage here, because these Praetorian Guard are going to absolutely grind on anything that is left for Syracuse. 104 kills on that one. This one's about to hit 100. Gladiatresses performed pretty well overall here. Alright, so this auxiliary cav's now engaged with two Campanians. There is another auxiliary cav that could go and join that fight, and I would think the Romans should want to. That Hippeus Lancer is looking for a target. I don't know if it's wanting a piece of these Praetorians. The Praetorians may want to brace for this. They are not. Their armor should give them some solid protection, though, against that brutal charge. And it is a brutal charge, but it only killed maybe 10 or 12 of the Romans there, and then that Lancer is going to take some pretty significant damage in that fight. The Triarii are lasting a long time. I'm not surprised by that. I'm also not surprised that the Thorax Hoplites are lasting for a long time. Either one of those army units has high attack, so it's going to take a long time in a fight. The Campanians end up in a grind out against the auxiliary cav. Not good for the Campanians, but again, don't write them out of this just because they're not rocking a bonus versus large. They are tough. Very tough units. They're going to do significant damage even if they lose. So it'll be curious to see what happens there. The Hippeus Lancers bounced out of that engagement with the Praetorians, headed back for the Slingers. That is a good call. And it looks like the... that's funny, the Tarentine cavalry were trying to turn this fight, but the Triarii just didn't even care. Didn't even care. This Praetorian Guard's got 120 kills. This one up to 143. So that Praetorian Guard is proving quite lethal right now to the Greeks. Look at this Campanian cavalry holding out tough in this fight against anti-large cavalry. Yeah, they're tough units. This is what I said. They can end up even in a fight with heavy infantry sometimes and do okay for a little while because they're just not easy to knock out. They're very powerful units. Praetorians are going to take over the fight with the Hoplites, leaving the Triarii to fend off the Hippeus Lancers. I think it's a good call. Here, the Triarii are going to be finished off by a Thorax Sword. This one is in a formation attack. You might want to consider releasing that. The other one may be as well, but so Rome is facing still some pretty significant numbers from Syracuse, and Syracuse may have just turned this cavalry fight with that Lancer charge. If the Campanians can get rid of this one, we might see the Syracusans pull off a victory still here if they can get their cavalry free to come help take care of these pockets of Roman resistance. The Roman infantry here, though, especially the Praetorians, is significantly superior to the Syracusan infantry. There's just a numbers game kind of at play here for the Romans. They're going to head into a square with their Triarii, and that will help them last longer, feasibly. This Praetorian's starting to wither under the pressure here. They're exhausted, and they're outnumbered probably better than 2-1 right now in terms of numbers. Yeah, 35, yeah, way more than 2-1, almost 3-1. That auxiliary cavalry putting up a really stellar fight and doing a good job, but that's going to leave Campanian cavalry. I'm starting to really think that there's a very real possibility that Syracuse wins this fight. Rome is going to definitely want these spears to immediately come and intercept this cavalry before it can do too much damage. They had to pull a Praetorian out of this fight early, which leaves the other one alone to finish off that Samnite warrior. And the Samnites are putting up a pretty significant fight over here. And the Companions are helping. Yep, so let's watch this. These very, very stout Praetorian infantry are going to have to turn and face this charge, but they are going to take a beating from this Campanian cavalry. This stuff is going to be terrifying this late into a game. And I would imagine that they are going to put a significant hurt on these Praetorians, who are now faced from the front and rear with attack. Again, though, wouldn't write these guys out immediately, but they are going to be at risk. Look at this, though. A single Praetorian sitting here with green morale up against all this. Oh, that cavalry. There's a use the whip coming off on the Praetorian guards, so they're going to become even more dangerous. The numbers are certainly not in Rome's favor here, but the quality is definitely in their favor. I'm worried about the morale of the Roman units at the moment. Can it hold out against all these numbers? You know, like, will it say losing? Will you get see, attacked in the rear just because there's so many Syracusan units? These Romans are utterly exhausted from chopping apart so many Greeks. If they can stabilize, if you get the other unit over here, maybe they can pull off a win, but I just don't think so. You've got 110 thorax swords and another 60 here, along with another 93 mercenary veteran hoplites. Those are some very tough hoplites with decent AP. I think Rome is going to end up overmatched here in the end, but an interesting fight. Indeed. There's a long grind out, very long grind out. It's interesting to see so many Triarii come in for Rome. I guess at the price point, though, Triarii are not bad units, especially when you consider going into the type of infantry you'd be facing from Syracuse. But it does make me wonder, you know, like if there was a cohort-type unit, like a Principe or something, that you trade off with a few of those Triarii. They certainly would have traded better into these units, but maybe the Roman wanted extra cavalry protection up front. You know, they don't want to just get pummeled by heavy cavalry, which was certainly possible when you saw the Campanians and Lancers. So in that regard, I think the Triarii pick makes a lot more sense, because it means that the Syracusans can't just charge straight through a sword-only front line. So we are going to see a stellar performance from these Praetorians. 234, 247. It's just, they're not going to be quite elite enough, you know. So we saw the Chotel warriors recently in a battle as well, and the Chotel warriors did basically punch 2 for 1. The Praetorians, not as well here, right? They're good, but they're not quite that good. I think if this was armored Chotel warriors, they probably would have won this fight for sure. I don't know, it's close. These Praetorians might stabilize and pull this one off. It's going to really depend on what happens morale-wise. You got a Roman unit wavering. If it goes down, then it's certainly over for Rome. But if these thorax swords suddenly start to lose the fight and waver, then this could flip. We'll see. Numbers, there's only about 50 Romans left, and there's about 150, 170, yeah, there's more than 150 Syracusans left. So the Romans are going to have to do a substantial amount of killing. Here comes another use of the whip. Oh, now completely sandwiched by the mercenary veterans. Woo, this is closer than I expected it would be here. Oh, we got a red morale. Oh, no, now the Romans are wavering. Yeah, the Romans are sandwiched. This unit in the middle is for sure. Wow, that was an incredibly close fight. Good one there between Syracuse and Rome. Excellent. Excellent battle between Hotel Soap and Achilles there. Really cool to see. You know, both of these are very good players, and that was a fun battle to watch there. That was awesome, in fact. Yeah, those Thorax Hoplites, they didn't do a lot of killing, but they did a huge holding maneuver up front, which ended up being pretty impressive, honestly, in the end. The Samnites had a tough match on their hands, but did pretty respectable work, I think, all things considered, as did this mercenary veteran. The Roman cavalry is, I think, to be commended here. They ended up in a pretty tough engagement, but still managed to pull some decent weight, all things considered. The Praetorian cavalry, I don't know if that chevron was on there to begin with or not, but even if not, then again, they pulled decent weight in that fight, better than I thought they would, based how that initial engagement went. I think Rome had a really good advantage there, right up until the point that Hippeus Lancer smashed this spear gladiatrix in the side. If that had not happened, then that cavalry fight was very much in danger of going heavily into the favor of the Romans, and then probably swings this. But that was a really clutch maneuver there with the Hippeus Lancer to shut down that spear unit before it could do the key damage in that battle, and then bringing in that thorax sword to support as well. So that was a really nice play there by Achilles. And nice try to come back there, I think, by Hotel Soap and the Romans. And it was close there in the end, very close. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed this one. Heir of Carthage signing out for now. I'll see you soon with some more action in Total War Rome 2.